Good morning, everyone, and for those that are looking online, blessings, and hope you enjoy the message that God's given us today. I always try to think of, ask God, what's relevant for people today? I can talk about so many different things, but if people aren't feeling it or needing a word of an encouragement through the Word of God, it can just go over the top of them and not give them anything. And so he got me to go into my usual, quite regularly, Bible verse of the day from Bible Gateway, and it hit me. It was like Job 23. I thought, Job 23. Now, we're going to get there, but I thought, wow, it just enlightened me when I was looking at it. Now, what happened in Job, most of you will know, but for those of you who don't really know much of what happened in Job, God was really enthralled with this guy. He was really, if a man could be, he was closest to perfection. He did everything right by God. He had wealth beyond belief, but basically he had that many of all the different animals from, as it says, sheep and everything else or whatever he had. And he had 10 kids as well, but he did everything by the law, and God could see it and watched him, and he hated evil and anything and shunned it big time, So if his kids were celebrating, as it says there, a birthday or something or other, he would get up the next morning and get burnt offerings for all his kids in case one of them had talked in the wrong way about God, So he followed things very well, and he did it extremely well. And it wasn't like he just roped at it. He believed in God and he loved God. And so finally, as it says in chapter 1, verse 6, it says, "And one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, 'Where have you come from?' And Satan answered the Lord, 'From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it.' Then the Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, and a man who fears God and shuns evil.' 'Does Job fear God for nothing?' Satan replied. 'Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face.' The Lord said to Satan, 'Very well, then everything he has is yours, your power. But on the man himself do not lay a finger.'" So what did Satan do? He took his opportunity, didn't he? He went out and he had messengers coming back, everyone saying, "You've lost this, you've lost this." They've all gone. And poor old Job was sitting there, and the last thing, he lost all his children as well, all 10 of them. He had 7 boys and 3 girls, 10 of them. So he obviously didn't have a big blue screen TV back in the days to distract him too much. He had 10 kids. So, but he lost his children as well. Now that's a big thing to take. You just imagine that, Here he is, he's walking with God, he's in a great place, and then bang, everything he's got is taken from him. The whole lot, his kids, his flocks, his wealth, the whole lot, But did he curse him to his face? No. Would you have cursed him to his face? You probably would have, hadn't you? A big chunk of us would have cursed him to his face. But what did he say? At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. And then he fell to the ground and worshipped and said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, Job did not sin, but charging God with wrongdoing. What an amazing man. Would you do it? Would you have said that as your reply to God after having all your kids killed? All your stuff taken away from you? Everything? Obliterated. He was put back to nothing. And he didn't. There's a lot of parallels between Job and Jesus. And Jesus has been shown right through the Old Testament, everywhere. It all points to Jesus, doesn't it? In a lot of ways you've seen with likes of Moses and everything, the numbers and all the rest, the same sort of numbers cropped up with Jesus. The 40 days and everything else. There's, when you look at it. And then he took me to chapter 23. I thought, whoa, this is after, you've got to realise his so-called Job's comforters had been persecuting him, basically, as he was on trial all that time, and then also Satan goes back, stands in the queue before God, which is interesting in itself. He had to come to God, and God suggested it, but God gave him the right to do it. He could ask, but God could have refused him, couldn't he? He'd have said, no, you can't touch him. So God's got all power and everything. Satan's limited, God is unlimited in all things he can do. And so here he was. So he came back. What the second thing he gave him? Boils and everything else all over him, which gave him such a painful existence. So not only did he lose everything, the second thing he gave him, he says, I'll make him, what's the name, curse you and disrespect you and give up on you. I'll give you all these I'll put boils all over his body. And then on top of that, he had to put up with his wife and 3 of these doozies, his so-called mates, putting them down. What an amazing, I think all lawyers should go, the prosecutor and his defendants and everything else should read the book of Job, because you see what the world's about today and their attitudes towards him and what he should have needed, according to them, should do. And you see it in the world, how it operates right now. And John is right in what he was saying. There's so much going on around now. That sign when he says the 2, rapture ready, or the other one, what if? And I said, put the fear, what is it again? Don't fear God, find Jesus, And that's what you need to do in the world today. And so many are out there are in fear. But I don't have a worldly fear of God. I have a fear of God because of his majesty and his ability and what he can do and everything else. And I don't want to get anything wrong. I want to spend more time in him and doing things for him. So Job 23. You remember, he's in absolute pain at this time. And he's had these guys, and he had to reply to them all. So, when you've got under stress, just think of Job. I'm not going through anything near what he's doing. Yet he still loved the Lord. And you read here, you just read this. In Job 23, even today my complaint is bitter. His hand is heavy in spite of my groaning. He's groaning. The poor guy's under. He's still there taking a beating, really, from all these ones around him, And he knows it. He says, he's at his end, and God knows it, and it's not long after this that God takes all the things away, and he's restored to even more than what he had before. I always wonder, does he have another 10 or 15 kids? Does he say to his wife, you got to give him another 10 or 15 back? How she'd grown with that thought, eh? After her downing him as well, you know. But anyway, that's beside the point, you know. It's just my humour. But anyway, verse 3. If only I knew where to find him. If only I could go to his dwelling. The guy, you know, God pulled away from him. It's a test. So he can't find God. He had a relationship with God, and the poor guy can't seem to see where God's not turning up for him. You know, he's in a tough way. And it says, I'd state my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would find out what he would answer me and consider what he would say to me. Most people would have given up on him before now and joined the three that were putting him down and telling him he had to repent. You know, if you look at this guy, who was it that's... Eliphaz is the one of the three. And this is what 23 is about. He just told him, you know, you need to repent because you were too rich and you were suppressing the poor or something or other. He says that's what you were doing, so that's why you've got what you've got. So they were thinking up all the different reasons why he's in this state. And so, yeah, he's sitting there and rebuking them and saying, no, God hasn't done this to me all this time. God hasn't done it to me. And he's saying, yeah, towards the back end of this thing here. And he says in verse 5, I would find out what he would answer me and consider what he would say to me. Would he vigorously be? No, he would not press charges against me. You know? He knows that God wouldn't press charges against him. He still has his faith in God, even for all this here. There the upright can establish their innocence before him, and there I would be delivered forever from my judge. The guy's, you know, fighting hard to stay in the right, so I'd say, frame of mind, because where he would be, he's in groaning because of the pain that he's had to endure. And he said also to lose everything he's got, and everyone around him was telling to give up on God, to do exactly what Satan wanted him to, was trying to make him do. But he won't. He knows God's there for him, and he's going to come through from it at some point. There's a brilliant statement to come up here now. And this one, it says in verse 10, which we'll get to. And it says in verse 8, but if I go to the east, he is not there. If I go to the west, I do not find him. When he is at work in the north, I do not see him. When he turns to the south, I catch no glimpse of him. He can't feel God's presence, see it anywhere, or see it at work and amongst him. What a lonely place for the poor guy to be sitting in pain. Everything's gone. His 10 kids have been killed. He's got nothing. He's just sitting there in an absolute boils all over him, which are causing him pain and everything else. But he's still not giving up on God. What an amazing guy this guy is, I reckon, for me anyway. But verse 10, it says, but he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. What a statement, eh? He knows he's going to, at some point in time, when he's finished testing him, it says, you know, when he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. He knows that at some point in time, God will come to his rescue. He's got to hang in there, And what have we got to do today? Hang in there, haven't we? You've got to hang in there. At times you want to throw it away. Spit the dummy, all the rest of it. People are doing it all the time. You know, as things go tough, oh, God did it to me, and blame God for everything. You know? No. Sometimes you did it yourself. You put yourself in that situation, and then when you've got into the mess, you say, oh, God, why did you let me do this? You did it yourself, son or daughter. You know? Are you wanting to get out of it? Are you repentant enough for me to come in and get you back out on track? Or do you still want to try and do it in your own strength, you know? And so many out there today, and so many are walking away. What did he say in the last days? A lot of faith will go cold. You know, they won't endure. They won't stand. They won't keep their eyes focused on Jesus. But he had it right. What did he say? Verse 10, when he is at work verse 10, but he knows the way that I take. He does know the way everyone takes, doesn't he? You don't. You're all as important as each other, as everyone in this world, equally. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. He's rejoicing. He knows it. Well, you know, if you're here today, you'd be looking forward to the rapture. My feet have closely followed his steps. I have kept to his way without turning aside. I have not departed from the commands of his lips. I have measured the words of his mouth more than my daily bread. But he stands alone, and who can oppose him? He does whatever he pleases. He knows God really well. He fears God. He knows exactly that God will do what he pleases. He'd love to have that discussion with him, because I suppose he's thinking, what have I done? You know, I thought I was in perfect, and he was. God looked upon him as a perfect believer in a sense. And he says, and Satan knew in a sense, he wasn't. He still made mistakes. And pride, his pride was what let him down in the end. But it caused Satan to fall as well as his pride, wasn't it?
The statements that you made that you're reading out to this point,
yeah.
Anyhow, later on,
yeah, I know.
Brings them back to Job and says your pride's tripped you up. Because you've said, Job, that this and that and this and that, but he was wrong.
Yeah.
Because, but what you say is right, but Job was caught in absolute state of pride.
Yep, and that's where I was going to end. But you've brought it up for me. He carries out his decrees against me, and many such plans he still has us in store. That is why I am terrified before him. When I think of all this, I fear him. We all need to fear him. He knew well, but he still had his pride, and that's what was his downfall, and that's what we find if you go through the chapters at the end, when the others bring back and show him what he really had wrong with him. God has made my heart faint. The Almighty has terrified me. Yet I am not silenced by the darkness, by the thick dust that covers my face. God was with him before this darkness hit him, and he knew that was still there. He had to wait and go through this darkness. Yeah, and look, pride is the one that is a downfall for so many people these days, isn't it? I'm afraid, and that was his small downfall. It was his pride, and he had to swallow that in the end, and realise that he still had things to work on, and pride was his biggest one. And in so many cases, it's pride that knocks a lot of people down these days. You only got to look at a lot of the world leaders around and all the church leaders, that pride has knocked them into shape, brought them down. and it was for Job. But as, a man that...
Well, Job recognised it though, that's what makes him special.
He recognised it in the end as well, yeah. And a lot of people won't. And that's their problem, that a lot of people won't recognise their pride and deal with it. Ask God to deal with it, basically. You can't do it yourself, but ask God to deal with your pride. And say, look, I can't do this, but Lord help me, because I've got to work on this situation in my pride. And Job, I think, is it one of the first books of the Bible that was written? I think if it isn't, they believe it to be. And so, what a mighty book to start with, It's one that you can spend hours in looking at all the different ways that the three of them came at Job. And then he would answer them back. And looking at those answers back, it gives us a great insight of who we are, and we still are today like they were back then. Our situations, we always want to blame someone else for it, but sometimes we've got to own it. Yeah, never mind. We've got to own it, don't we? And until we own it, we can't deal with it with God. And that's half the problem these days, is that we don't want to own it. We want to hide it under the bushel, as they say, or sweep it under the carpet. It's a bit tough for that one. I don't want to cover that one just yet. We'll leave it there, and I'll just go on the way I am, because I'm happy the way I am. But God says, no, you've got to deal with it. And it's the same for me. I've got situations I've got to deal with, to go forward even more, front up with. And everyone's got to get these Job situations from time to time. And it's going back to just saying, Lord, I can't do it without your strength. I can't do it in mine.
Don't like it.
Eh?
Don't like it.
What's that? Oh, no.
Job situation.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't go through what Job went through. I don't think. I know I wouldn't be strong enough to do it. And you got to realise that God knows your strengths too. He knew that Job was such an amazing guy that he allowed Satan to do this. But Satan had to ask first, didn't he?
Just repeat this so people hear it, Job.
And you. Yeah. So this today is like, we're all in this world at the moment. It's in a pretty big mess, isn't it? An absolute mess. And a lot of people are living in fear. And yet, I rejoice. I'm happy. Because I know there could be a rapture soon, and I'm out of here. Don't covet what you've got. He's shown me in many times with all the... I've had 3 cyclones that have wrecked me place, And the first one made me say, God said to me, it's mine as Job would say, it's yours to do what you want to do with. And if you start coveting things in this world, he'll search you out, pretty quick and easy. It's his to do what he wants with. And until you realise that, all things, including your family and everyone, he'll deal to them. That's why I love to pray for those ones in that box. I'm hoping like heck that they are getting these appointed times with God, and he's really trying to show them, who he is, what they're missing out on, the greatest gift this world has ever received, the gift of the cross, So don't worry about the things of this world, as God says. Just worry about what's happening in the day around you. You can't change the future, and you can't change the past, but you can change what's happening each day. And walking properly with God and reading your scriptures, getting into your scriptures and praying. Don't fall into everything that's happening around the world and making it change your view and on God and everything. Stick with your view of God, and just, as Lindsay would always say, it's a simple message for simple people made complicated by man. And man and Satan want to complicate things to make you pull away from God and Jesus. So that's my little word for the day. If you think you're getting tested more than you can handle, God knows your limitations. He knows everyone's limitation, and he knew when he had to step in on Job, and he did it at the right appropriate time. Until Job had realised the error of his ways and the pride that he had to swallow, then he got given more back in the way of flocks and wealth and everything else by God when he restored him, as it says. He had manyfold more. But Job would have been stronger and more wiser from what he had to go through. So there's going to be times of trouble. There's going to be times when you're feeling down and out. But God's there. You've just got to get in touch with him and walk your way through it with him. So there we are. That's my word for the day. I hope it encourages you and pulls you closer to God. Amen.